437 North Wasatch Drive, commencing at 7:03 p.m. on April 2nd, 2020. With that, we'll turn the time over to Councilman Morris. He's going to lead us in the prayer and the pledge, and then we'll go to our minutes. So, Councilman Morris.
Affirming the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful this evening to be able to be assembled as a city council and city staff here for Layton City. We're grateful for the peaceful circumstances in which we are able to meet. We are aware of the pandemic that we are all struggling with as well, and pray this evening for those who are struggling through this and those who are suffering. We ask that Thou would bless us with wisdom and continued protection as we move through this disruption. We are grateful for our first responders, those that have put themselves in harm's way for each of our benefit. We ask that Thou would please continue to bless them as they serve us. And please bless the residents of this fine city, Father. And these things we pray for and do in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilman Morris. That was a beautiful prayer, and we appreciate it, especially for our responders at this time. Okay, Council, with that, I'll look for a motion to approve our minutes.
Madam Mayor, I motion that we approve the minutes, Layton City Council meeting, March 5th, 2020, emergency meeting, March 12th, 2020, and emergency meeting, March 16th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, I would move on to municipal events. I know typically, Mr. Thomas, you'd be reporting.
There better not be any municipal events.
Excellent answer.
Okay.
However,
What?
there are two events that are going to take place that are considered essential events. One in particular will be a food drive that will take place on April 10th. This will be a non-contact food drive. It's actually, the reason why I'm willing to discuss this is because obviously the pantries are dry due to the last couple of weeks. And fortunately, we've got a dealership in town, the Young dealership, who has multiple dealerships throughout not only Davis County, but also Weber and Morgan. So they're conducting a one-day food drive and is asking all residents if they could to bag up some items and put that bag on the curb. And then between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., they are dispersing their vehicles along with their own staff primarily, or volunteers who will also have gloves. They're going to practice. There won't be more than basically a person on each side of the vehicle and one person driving. So there will be, good distance going on, and they'll go up through the neighborhoods and collect whatever food is put on the curb. So they're asking for it to be curbside. And it will be the food that is gathered in Weber County will go to the Catholic Church up there to be distributed. Anything in our county, or I should say primarily Layton, will also go to the Bountiful Food Pantry. And then anything collected in Morgan will stay in Morgan. Anybody who is not comfortable with that and would like to contribute, they are going to set up some barrels at their facilities where you can actually drive by and be able to roll down your window and put the food in the barrels. And in fact, if the food is not picked up after 2 p.m. on that day, then they would ask you to, if you could, to get that to them, to their dealerships and put them in those barrels, because they will be coordinated. They've got a big effort going on with the pantries to be able to collect this food. So I think it would be something good that, our citizens may want to participate in.
So Mayor, it's not going to our food bank, our Open Doors?
So our Open Doors actually gets their food from the pantry as well.
Okay.
So yes, it will be bad. This is literally has caused the pantry to be dried up, as well as the fact I know that they're good about putting together the packets for the kids. Typically on a Friday afternoon, the young kids at school would be able to collect those weekend packs. So they'll be also using this food to kind of help with those.
Who does that?
The weekend packs?
Yeah, right.
So that there's a lot of different groups that end up going
so
in
it's
and
not
doing.
just a group.
Right, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not the school district, anything like that.
There's various groups that will go out there and kind of put
okay.
those together. Of course, now, with the social distancing, it's probably more critical that they're putting together packages for the entire family and being able to kind of work it that way. So that's why they really do need some of this food.
Well, Open Doors will take food as well. You can't
Yes.
give it to them. They'll come and they'll grab it out of your trunk or out of the back of your truck. They need it as well. So
Right. Yeah. This is a situation statewide, but I do know locally, look, they're trying to do what they can to help correct
And
this.
the day, I'm sorry, I missed
April
that.
10th. Hope that's right.
Are we going to send out an announcement or anything?
So the announcement will actually come from their dealerships. They've got a flyer that they're putting together, and then once they have it finalized, they'll end up sharing it with us, and then you guys will be able to kind of to spread that out through your networks as well, just to kind of help get the word out.
And the time again is 10 to 2 at the curbside?
10 a.m. to 2 p.m. curbside.
Okay. Hopefully it doesn't rain that day.
Yeah. So one more item that I think might be good, knowing that we've got a lot of kids that are being homeschooled and looking for activities. This might be kind of fun. It's through the Davis Arts Council. This come up this afternoon. We did some brainstorming. I did some brainstorming with them. And what we'd like to do to kind of help all those on the front lines that are dealing with the coronavirus. It's hard with the anticipation of knowing you're going to have this wave come in, and it's quite taxing on the medical staff already. So it's just kind of a good upbeat, lifting gesture for them. What we'd like anybody, including the council, I'd like to see you guys submit to the Davis Arts Council a drawing, a card, just a single image, or if you have a painting that you'd like to share with them, we'd like you to go ahead and send that artwork or that submission. And actually, I'm going to read this. It's from the Davis Arts Council. It says, inviting our community to stay home, stay safe, and make art. We are partnering with our local hospitals to share work. From multiple submissions are welcome. Artwork can be sent to stay safe, make art at gmail.com. So again, that's stay safe, make art at gmail.com. And if you want additional information on that, you can go ahead and email the Davis Arts Council at davisarts.org. So I think that will be a fun gesture. They're going to put together a kind of a, not really a PowerPoint, but a slideshow on that they will be able to kind of show in the monitors at the various hospitals. And depending on how much artwork they get, they can do multiple releasings of that. So I think that would be a good gesture on behalf of our citizens here. Okay. I feel like I'm doing all the talking, but those were two items there that I think would be good for all of us. So we'll now move on to item number 3, which is our verbal petition and presentation. And today what we'd like to do is have a proclamation regarding the awareness of Sexual Assault Month. We've done this in the years past for those of you on the council. So I'll read our proclamation. Typically, they would be here in person, and we'd be able to present them with their certificate, but given the current state of the virus, we'll just be reading the petition. Whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month is intended to draw attention to the fact that sexual violence is widespread and has public health implications for every community member. And whereas rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment impacts our community, as seen by statistics indicated that 1 in 5 women will have experienced sexual assault by the time they are college age. And whereas we must work together to educate our community about what can be done to prevent sexual assault and how to support survivors. And whereas staff and volunteers of anti-violent programs in Layton City encourage every person to speak out when witnessing acts of violence, however small. And whereas with leadership, dedication, and encouragement, there is compelling evidence that we can be successful in reducing sexual violence in our community through prevention, education, increased awareness, and holding predators who commit these acts of violence responsible for their actions. And whereas Layton City strongly supports the efforts of national, state, and local partners and of every citizen to actively engage in public and private efforts, including conversations about what sexual violence is, how to prevent it, how to help survivors connect with service, and how every segment of our society can work together to better address sexual violence. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Joy Petro, Mayor of Layton City, along with this Layton City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2020 as Layton City's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. In witness whereas I have caused the seal of the City of Layton, Utah to be affixed on this 2nd day of April 2020. And here is the certificate that we'll be passing on to these folks and let them be able to recognize, or so that we are acknowledging the fact that we are, tongue-tied, that we want to let everyone be aware of this situation.
So who are these folks? Are we talking the shelter people, or who?
So
who is this going to specifically?
So it's with Safe Harbor.
Safe Harbor. Okay.
And typically at this, in years past, what they've done is they've actually wrapped our light poles with turquoise ribbons. Mm-hmm. So to kind of help let everyone be aware of the fact that this month is Sexual Assault Month. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. They've relied on volunteers in the past to be able to put those ribbons up. And this year, obviously, we're all in a different circumstance. So if not, just, please make sure that, we let everyone know, or if you witness it, to please come forward and let's stop this act of violence. Okay. Moving on. Item number 4 is citizen comments. Typically at this time, we'd have our citizens' comments. I do know that with this, at this time, we're actually live streaming. And should any comments come in, there will be a delay, but we can handle those. But also, if there are none, you're welcome to still comment, and we'll try to address those in an email and getting back to anybody after this. So, does that work? Okay.
Madam Mayor, did we have any come in via email from before the meeting? It was announced today that you could.
Right. Hey, Gary, do you know if we received any emails beforehand?
Well, it looks like we only have one question, and that is just a question as to whether we as a city are sheltering in place. And I think the answer to that is that according to the Davis County order that came out on the 1st, that yes, Layton City is sheltering in place as well as all of Davis County. So the answer to that would be yes.
Because we're considered essential, right? Essential services, so we need to still be open. We still need to kind of conduct business.
Yeah, the way the order reads is that essential services can continue, provided that we abide by the other recommendations in the order, which are We don't encourage large gatherings, which that's the reason we are doing it this way. We have the doors locked. There's nobody here, and we also have separation. Abide by the separation. Those are the two things that we had to do, and so we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, council, we'll move on to item number 5, which is our consent items, which these items are considered routine in nature and can be acted as one single motion. If discussion is desired or any particular consent item, then that item may be removed from the consent agenda and we can deal with that separately. So seeing that there's none that would want to be moved, let's proceed with item A, which is the adoption of the municipal wastewater plan, which will be presented by Steve Jackson.
Mayor and council members, before you tonight for your consideration is Resolution 20-21, which is the adoption of the 2019 Layton City Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Annual Report. The report is required by the State of Utah Department of Environmental Health, Division of Water Quality, and it requires that Layton City perform a report every year for the financial and operational sufficiency of our sanitary sewer collection system. The alternatives are to adopt Resolution 20-21, authorizing the adoption of the 2019 Layton City Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Annual Report, adopt Resolution 20-21 with any amendments the council deems appropriate, or not adopt Resolution 20-21 and remand to staff with directions. Staff recommends that council adopt Resolution 20-21, authorizing the adoption of the 2019 Layton City Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Annual Report, and authorize the mayor to sign the necessary documents. Is there any questions I can help answer?
Council?
Steve, I just have a couple. So one of the questions in part 2 talked about a repair and replace sinking fund. And the answer to the question was no, we don't have one. What is a repair and replace sinking fund?
Basically, if you're paying for the depreciation of the system, if we're putting money aside every year to pay for that as a part of the user fees that we have, and the sinking fund continues to grow until it's a substantial number, and we do not have that, although we do have a reserve that we do keep and keep for potential replacements, but we do not require residents to pay for the depreciation on the pipe as the asset ages, if that makes sense.
Okay. And then the question that was asked in the rate study about the replacement costs being budgeted for at 2%, and the answer was no.
Yeah. That number would come out to be about $6 million a year. If you look at our annual value of replacement, which is $305 million. And so basically we do not have enough required maintenance or replacement of our system to justify paying $6 million a year to replace pipes that are functioning and working well. If you look at the report, we had 10 instances that were considered Class 2 instances. One was a boring contractor who ended up boring through a sewer line and caused 5 of those. So we feel like the system is very healthy and funded well. The maintenance is being taken care of in an appropriate manner, but that 2% I think is just a question they have. I don't believe that very many places are spending that kind of funds to replace their systems unless they're in really bad shape.
Okay. And then my last question is, it talked about, one of the questions was regarding the largest diameter of lines that we have.
Yeah.
And when it was last replaced or repaired, and it says not since 1956.
Yeah.
So where is this line, and is that a concern that it's been 60 years, more than 60 years since it's been?
Not really. It's an 18-inch pipe, and it was installed in 1956. The average life of a concrete pipe can be anywhere from 60 to 100 years, and so as we look at those things, we televise our system, and we have a 7-year rotation in which we're televising every line, and so we're looking at those condition assessments, and if the system requires it, that's when they get put on the list for replacement. So I'm not concerned that it's a 60-year-old pipe. We have pipes that are, that old in our water system as well, and we evaluate those as an asset management process. But if there's nothing wrong with the pipe, we don't feel like there's any reason to just replace it simply because of its age.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. We'll give you a moment to get out. Not get out, excuse me. Leave the room. Get out of here. I know. Hey, we got to liven this meeting up somehow. Kind of like. And our next item will be presented by Mr. Dave Price, which is our bid award for LSI contractors, which is on the Case Creek and DRNG trailhead. So good timing, Mr. Price.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, this evening I have the pleasure of introducing Resolution 2020. This resolution authorizes and ratifies the execution of an agreement between Layton City and LSI Contractors, LLC for site improvements of the Case Creek and the DNRGW trailhead located at 668 Vance Drive. The project includes the preparation of the site for an installation of a drinking fountain, concrete pathways, a kiosk, benches, and landscape improvements. This project and these improvements are included in the current budget approved by the council. On February 18th, 2023, bids were received with LSI submitting the lowest responsible bid in the amount of $78,014.50. On March 18th, 2020, negotiations for entering into an agreement were recommended by park staff to the city manager to execute an agreement because LSI's desired timeline for commencing the work. Should the agreement have been delayed, construction would not have commenced until late summer because of LSI's other awarded projects. The agreement was executed by LSI and the city to formalize the awarded bid, and work was begun on the project. Staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2020, authorizing the city manager to conduct negotiations and execute the agreement between Layton City and LSI for construction of the Case Creek and DNRGW trailhead, and ratify any actions heretofore in furtherance of this resolution. Any questions?
So the way I read it, and I drove by there the other day, they're actually moving dirt. So some of the agreement's already been in place and they've started. We're just more or less ratifying that part of it and accepting the bid, right?
That's correct. As awards are
Thank you.
as awards are scheduled for these contractors, the sooner you get the agreement in place, the earlier your construction date is scheduled. And so we did not want to wait and let another city or organization jump in and take that first spring schedule. Typically, we don't do it this way, but LSI basically came to us and said, we've got several big projects in the pipeline. If we assign the agreement with one of them first, your project will be bumped to the late summer or fall. So we did go ahead with the execution of the agreement. And today you can ratify that if you choose to.
And then I just have a couple of questions. So since I moved from there, I'm going south on the trail now instead of right there. Is there a bathroom there? I mean, that was always the discussion, was there was going to be a bathroom at that trailhead, or is this going to replace that?
There is not a bathroom at this location.
Okay. And that's off the table then?
The city council, the previous city council, removed the restroom from this site.
Okay.
Do you want to go into detail, though, as far as some of the items that are there? Because there will be the changing station or your bicycle, right? Pump
Yes.
station. So, yeah.
There's, in those amenities, there's a very
Excuse me,
nice-
Dave. Just because we're all new at this, I've been instructed to really watch you guys and make sure you talk straight into the mic, because these are directional mics and they don't pick up sideways. So when you turn sideways, they don't pick it up.
Okay. So the site amenities in this area, there's some very nice landscaping up front that includes small ornamental grasses. There's a little plaza area with benches, a nice trellis that will have informational signage on, as well as a bike station, a drinking fountain, and a pet watering station.
And the only other question I have is, I shared with you an email about the concern about the maintenance of the trail from the Parkway to Gentile, which this falls in the middle of all of that. I did hear back from the one homeowner that you did come out and they did clean up the garbage, but they're still concerned about the trees and the overgrowth onto the trail itself. So when all of this landscaping is put in, will those issues be addressed as well to make that part of the trail safe?
This trailhead is located on city-owned property, and we will maintain it and take care of it like we do our other properties.
Well, they're asking about the trees that are falling onto the trail that are on the easement that I'm assuming the city maintains the easement of the trail itself.
I can speak to where they're talking. It's not north to Gentile. It's actually kind of east towards Flint Street. You know, that little gap that runs along the creek there. There is a lot of branches that have fallen and are all in there. And I know that we just haven't had a chance to send a crew out there to work on it.
This is directly the homes that back on Trailside Drive. That's where these complaints have come from, that there are trees that grow along the trail that are not the homeowners, that are hanging over onto the trail and leaning onto the trail and stuff. And they got back to me and said the trash was picked up, but they thought the trees would have been taken care of. So that's just a sideline to this. But just since you were here, I thought I'd tell you that.
No, I'm glad you did. It's important distinction is that the ownership of that property is not in our hands. We have a very limited agreement with UTA to manage the trail and the immediate area next to it. Our agreement does not authorize us or direct us to take care of the entire landscape from north to south in the city. We have always removed any hazards or anything that could cause a problem for the homeowners or that could fall on or directly injure people on the trail. If the city wanted us to be more active in the entire landscape from fence line to fence line, from the south side of the city boundaries to the north, that would be a change in what we are currently doing.
Okay.
Take our direction from you on that.
Okay. I haven't gone out there to look, but my understanding is these trees are on the trail. They're leaning onto the trail, presenting a safety issue. So, so I should have them call UTA is what I need to do?
No, if it's a safety issue,
okay,
our crews will typically immediately get out there and remove that safety issue.
Are you talking on the DNRG part?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, but that goes from the south end of the city all the way to the north. It's
no, I know that. I'm just saying that this
bad trees and
yeah. Mm-hmm. And if they're causing a problem, whose responsibility is it to take care of? So trees. So
Question about the time of year when the goat heads come out for the cyclists and those on bicycles. How is that maintained? And Don says that's another problem. What's the maintenance schedule of that, and who is responsible for those?
We are responsible for the trail maintenance, and we typically send someone out throughout the year. In the spring, they will spray to remove the growth of the goat head plants. And throughout the year, we send out a blower to clean those goat heads as well as other debris off the trail. And that occurs about every 2 weeks. If it seems that we need to do that more often, we can certainly increase that.
Yeah, there's just the season near in the summer that they get really crazy because they dry up and you have all the goat heads. So that's good to know. We can make sure if we do see that, we can, or if it gets worse, we can let you know, and that's good to know. So thanks.
Now that we're aware of it, we can take a more active approach to it.
Well, you could put a blower on your bike. I mean, come on.
So the bids were received on the 18th, and then the work was started a month later. Is there a reason why this wasn't on the March 5th calendar, on the March 5th agenda?
It was just a timing issue. We brought it as quickly as we could bring it to you.
Okay. It just leaves the council with no real remedy if we didn't. I mean, I don't have any problem with this bid. but it leaves the council with no remedy if there's already been work on it that's been done on it. So I guess it's more just procedural, and maybe Gary can speak a little bit to that.
Sure. Just so you know, this is just a little bit of information. A lot of the contracts that come through my office from different departments in the city, the projects are actually already approved in the budget. So the council's already looked at them. They've approved a budget for the year. But I've always insisted, at the behest of the city manager, that we bring those that are most important back to you so you can see them, so you understand which contracts have been approved and which have not. So sometimes, and especially where you got construction involved, you want to get people in as early as you possibly can, but you've already approved the contract. You've approved the budget. But so we're bringing it back to you just so you can see, I guess, the product of what you've approved, which is, the actual. So you're not actually approving it from the beginning. You're just subsequently approving what you've already approved once already. So I hope that clarifies, because you're going to.
I mean, it just, if it's already been approved, but I just would like to review, if you're going to bring it back, then we should be able to do something about it when it comes back. If the work's already been started, then there's really no reason to bring it back.
You're going to see that happen quite a bit, though, because we want you to know what these guys are doing. We want you to, somebody will ask you, well, what's going on over there? And you'll say, well, project's going on. We've approved that project. This is almost a formality a lot of times in bringing the contracts back to you. Most of the time we're ahead of the game. We're able to bring them back to you early, but especially right now where you got so much competition for contracts, what I've told them is get them going and then bring them back to you afterwards. Because, if there is something fatal in it, you can always stop the contract and give it to somebody else. But the bottom line is these guys have got to get these projects done that you've authorized and you've funded. And that's the reason that you'll see a lot of them come through that you've already approved, kind of, is what you've done. So hope that helps, Zach. I understand what you're saying from a legal standpoint. You're going, well, what's our recourse if this? Well, your recourse would be to stop the project if you weren't going to fund it. In fact, interestingly enough, there's a provision in most of our agreements that say that you can choose not to appropriate any time as a council for something that is in the process of being done. So you can budget it, but then not appropriate.
We do have a remedy then.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all my question. It was, like I said, it was more procedural. It's not like I have a problem with this bid. It was just the dates just didn't line up with my legal mind.
I figured I could see it in your eye. I'm sitting there thinking, he's
thanks.
wondering why you do this in advance, after the fact, ex post facto.
Thanks for the clarification.
For Dave.
Don't use that
For
word.
Dave.
No.
Throw that in.
Say afterthought.
So just one comment, since we're talking about the DNRG Trail for a minute. Alex, if you could, one of my concerns always there is not necessarily the limbs, but I think it's a potential danger for people and the type of people that sometimes are around there having property that borders it and seeing what goes on. If as the weather gets good here, if we could just reinforce to the police to ride their bikes down there once in a while, whatever, especially during the evening hours, I think is critical.
Yeah, especially north, going all the way to our northern boundary as well.
Yeah, last year, the homeless problem was less than the previous year, but it's always seems to be kind of a problem down there too. So,
And
just
Mr.
a little
Dave,
police presence would help.
we do try to trim back that immediate area off
Yeah.
the shoulder of the trail so that people have a little clearer sight line, so they can see farther up the trail and behind them.
And I think the Parks Department does a good job. I don't think there's any way you can tackle the big trees, but I've seen you mow, and you mow to the edge of where you can very well, in my opinion.
Thank you.
I'd agree with that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well then we'll give you a moment to vacate the building,
Thank you.
the area, and bring on Chad Wilkeson for item number C, which is our annex request, which is on the Robinson Annex, which is Resolution 20-23, which is approximately 3645 West, 100 South. So, Mr. Wilkinson, you're up.
Thank you. Mayor and council, just give me one moment to bring up my presentation. There we go. So this is actually the beginning of the process for an annexation. An annexation petition has been received by the city for approximately 3 acres.
Aha. There we go.
That process requires that the city council take a step to direct staff to move forward with this annexation. We have two resolutions here. One is acceptance and the other is certification of this annexation petition. So resolutions 20-22, 20-23. This is a picture of that property that's being requested. It's out west. You can see Gentile right at the top of your screen. Here's the property in red, that crosshatched area. This would start the process, which would then require several weeks of public notice prior to a public hearing for the city council to decide on that annexation request or not. So we are recommending that the council adopt resolutions 20-22 and 20-23, accepting and certifying the petition for annexation for these approximately 2.9 acres located at about 3645 West, 100 South.
Just a information question, Chad. Is that property west of there unannexed? And is that Syracuse west of there?
This is unannexed property, and that is Syracuse City, yes.
So the blue line is Syracuse, right? North of there?
This is Syracuse, yeah.
Okay.
This is Layton, yeah.
And this doesn't create an island. I mean, are we going to allow access? Obviously, Syracuse has already stopped the ability to come into this unannexed piece of property.
So, and again, tonight we're not taking any action on the annexation. It's just an initiated petition to begin the process for reviewing annexation. To answer that question, though, this is not an island. This is a peninsula. This is all unincorporated Davis County, so that's a peninsula that would be created. There will be some discussion that we'll bring forward to you at a future council meeting to talk about some conditions that will be applied to this annexation. There's some things that we want to put in an annexation agreement that will provide for access to that property in the future. Any other questions?
Well, so in a situation like that, is the agreement with Syracuse that will come into Layton eventually or not?
This property is within our annexation, identified annexation area. Yeah. So we'll have some again, conditions in an annexation agreement that make sure that we have adequate access to that property when it does get annexed.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, this actually brings our consent items to a conclusion, so I'll look for a motion for adoption of the consent items as presented.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we adopt the consent items, which include Resolution 20-21, the adoption of the City Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Report, the bid award for the Case Creek DNRG Trailhead, and this annexation, which is 2022 and 2023.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and move into our public hearing portion of our meeting. And again, Mr. Wilkinson will be presenting that item, which is the plat amendment for Gentile Station subdivision.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is a public hearing. I did want to mention at the beginning of this hearing that the applicant is not in attendance tonight, but he is available by phone if we need to have any questions answered, and is viewing this through the broadcast. This is a request for an amended plat, which requires a public hearing before the City Council under this circumstance. This is a development that you've seen probably as you've driven on Gentile that's going forward. As the development moved towards building permit, it was noted that there were some discrepancies between the plat and some of the architectural designs for the buildings. The applicant has come into us. We actually really appreciate when this happens up front like this, when the applicant still has all the properties under one ownership. It enables us to do this before we have other individual property owners that have purchased these units, and which complicates the process. But this will entail small adjustments to a number of these units. They range anywhere from inches to just a couple of feet of adjustments to the property boundaries for these units. These types of adjustments are fairly common, and again, this is something that is good to catch at this stage, so that the construction of the units actually matches what's platted on that plat. The applicant again has gone through. We've taken this to the Planning Commission for their review, and they have recommended that the City Council approve this plat amendment. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can. And again, those yellow units or green, whatever you're seeing on the screen, are the units that would be subject to change. The other ones didn't have any modifications needed.
Okay. Council, any questions on this? Okay, seeing that there's none, and this is a public hearing, and we are under different circumstances here, I do know that we do have this up for any questions that may have been submitted prior to or actually live now. I know that there is a delay, so we'll give it just a minute and see if there's been anything that's come through. Nothing? Okay.
Are you talking about my comment? On the egress, they have ability to turn right or left, especially on the one at the bottom.
Here,
Egress, I don't know if that's the right word, but
you're talking about the vehicle
on the
access.
exit where they're exiting out on the Gentile, and they go left, and on the bottom one.
I don't believe there's any restricted access, but I actually don't know the answer to that question. Steve, again, I can go check with him, but
I'm just, because I don't know how far, but it's not very far from the
full access. Steve's
area.
telling me from behind full access on that.
full access.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think there's three of us that probably drive this road regularly, and
Well, I
it's
just,
striped, right?
yeah, I mean, I think there's enough room. I just get a little concerned when they stop for the children, which is great, at the
Crosswalk.
crosswalk. But then when they're done and everybody starts going,
Yeah, thank you. And just as a reminder, this plat has already been approved. What they're looking at is just an amendment, small adjustments to each of these units to be in conformance with the architectural drawing. So that plat's already been approved.
right, I'm sure it has, obviously. I just was wondering, because I travel it a lot, and
If I
twice
recall,
a day, it's pretty rough.
if I recall, Dave, there was quite a bit of discussion at the
Sure there
time
was,
with
yeah.
the school and the in and out of the school and the whole thing through
Yeah.
that whole process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I felt comfortable. I just had a few little worries that I'll find out
So Chad,
after it's up.
oh, sorry. How do they usually detect these little inches and feet when they go to survey for the lots and stuff? It just comes up, or?
Yeah, it comes up in that instance. Sometimes when someone purchases a property down the line, and someone comes out and does some survey work for them, they'll detect these discrepancies at that point. So this is actually the best time to catch these types of discrepancies and fix them, for sure.
Okay. I'm going to look back to our technical team and see, has there been any other additional questions that have come in, or any questions whatsoever regarding this Gentile station? Okay, very good. Council, are you comfortable with closing the public meeting then and making a motion on this? Okay, if so, then I'll look for somebody to take some action.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we close the public hearing and approve the plat amendment for the Gentile Station subdivision plat amendment, approximately 280 West Gentile Street.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. It's being that this is a public hearing, we do need to take a roll call vote. So with that, I'll start with Councilman Thomas on the end.
Yes, it's fine.
Speaking to the mic.
Yes.
Okay, Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman
Yes.
Fitzpatrick? Okay. Councilman Bloxham?
Aye.
Councilman Day?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So that concludes our regular council meeting. However, in our prior work meeting, we agreed to, wait, before I say we need to go, Gary, do we need to close the council meeting before we go back to our items on our work meeting? We do, right?
Speak directly into the mic.
Thank you.
We, yes, go ahead and close your regular meeting and go back into your work meeting. There was, just for your information, sometimes you get delayed citizen comment. There was one other citizen comment that I'll send on to my office for a response. It came in about 7:25, so probably around the time that you have citizen comment, but it was a request by a citizen that you adopt yourself as a 2A sanctuary city. So I'll get back to that citizen and kind of respond to that request.
Okay, via
that's okay.
email so that they know that they're being contacted.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay, so council, let's go ahead and close our regular council meeting for April 2nd, 2020.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we close this meeting and go back into a work meeting.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Well, we're. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll now go ahead and go back into our work meeting. And with that, we'll go on to which was item number 4. We wanted to have a be able to have time to have a full discussion regarding our street light and street maintenance. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Steve Jackson to make his presentation.
All right, thank you, Mayor. The request by Alex to come present to you with the street lighting, I guess, system report is one that I feel is very important for our city to understand. I wanted to start out by kind of giving you some background on the costs associated with our street lights. So on your screens, you can see that our residential lights, we call them the SLO2. That's just our numbering system, so we know which light goes where. Those costs, those light costs are about $1,900 per light just for the fixture. That doesn't include any of the install costs or any of the wiring or conduit that goes in associated with that. And so the install cost there on the screen is between $1,500 and $1,800 a piece for those. So substantial investment that we're making in our street lighting system. The SLO4s, which are on the collector streets that we have, those are quite a bit more. They're $2,500. They have a more decorative base and then also a cage that goes around the top of the light as well, fluted pole. The installation costs on those, as you can see, is quite a bit higher, $4,500 to $4,800, and that has to do with the amount of conduit and the amount of other. Sorry, I'm trying to not lean over the podium, but I'm going to try my best here. So, is that better? Sorry, Kim. I'll be. I should just yell really loud, I guess. But
Well, keep in mind these mics you have to.
You just talk right into
straight
them.
into them. Yeah, it doesn't pick up any sideways.
A little bit more experience here. So, okay, so as I was saying, the install costs on our collector streets is substantially higher, and that is due to the amount of conduit that we run. A lot of the residential lights, it's already in a subdivision. There's power in the park strip, and then they're direct connect lights, we call them, so they don't actually have a meter to them. The Rocky Mountain Power allows us to connect directly to the power and each individual one. However, on our collector streets, there's substantially more conduit, more wiring, more equipment that gets installed with each one of the lights, and so that actually drives the cost of the install up quite a bit. And the install cost, as I mentioned as well, it's not just the wiring and everything, it's the actual work that the contractors that we hire do in order to make those connections. So we do have a couple different lights as well. One on the screen there, the SLO3, we call those our specialty lights. Those you'll see down on Main Street near the UTA train station at Layton Parkway. And they're quite a bit of money. The reason for that is because they actually have two fixtures on the top of that head, so it doubles the cost of the fixture. They kind of run that same cost as our collector roads, as well as the arterials. Those are the ones that you see on Layton Parkway and some of our bigger streets, the teardrop design, we call them. And those lights are $3,800 a piece, basically because they're a larger light with the mast arm and things like that. So I want to go on to
Can I ask you a quick question there?
Yeah.
How are they metered then?
So on the lights that are part of the sorry, I've got the auto advance going on here. Let me turn that off. So the way they meter them is we design these systems, then we'll have a meter, an actual power meter that is installed with the lights. Those lights will be daisy chained together, they call it. And so we'll have one meter that will power the lights for like an entire section. So maybe from Angel Street out to 2200 West or something would be on a single meter.
Okay.
With those. So
Section.
sections of lights have different meters at different locations.
So Steve, I don't know if you can answer this question. Has that been the problem along Layton Parkway where the sections are going down, that it's in the metering, or is it in the installation, or what's been going on with those lights?
No, some of those lights, the problems are when we first installed the lights. I believe you're probably talking the further east sections that have had some challenges.
No, the further west
Are
sections.
the further west sections? The challenge has been that we've been trying to get the connections actually made, so the lights get put up, and then there's a delay between when we can actually have Rocky Mountain Power connect those.
Well, they've been up and they've gone out several times.
Yeah.
I've been texting Terry every time I find them, and they come in
Yeah.
sections. So are there failures somewhere along the line in installation or in the metering or?
The fuse kits, they're called. A lot of times those fuse kits, if there's a problem with that and they get water in them, then we have challenges. And so we're working to relocate those fuse kits into the poles themselves instead of being underground. A lot of our original lights were installed where the lights are the fuse kits are down in the ground, and they're waterproof, but they're not always perfect. And so those are some of the challenges that we're facing with that. But so I wanted to move on to our map here and the ownership of the lights. So everything you see on your screen in red is a light that Layton City has installed since the beginning of our program, about 2013. The lights in blue are actually lights that are owned by private ownership in those subdivisions. So for whatever reason, the individual developers installed private lights in those areas. And then the lighter gray dots are all of the Rocky Mountain Power lights throughout the city. So there's quite a bit of those Rocky Mountain Power lights, but there's quite a bit of Layton City ownership lights now as well. So wanted to bring your attention to those lights and the locations that those have been installed. As we go forward, there's quite a few lights that we've installed in subdivisions that were kind of in a transition phase. And then development is required to install new lights anywhere where there is new development occurring. So
those are probably HOAs and stuff, and they pay the bill on them as well?
no, those are city-owned street lights that we
The
pay.
blue ones?
Oh yes, the blue ones
blue
are
ones.
the blue ones are either HOAs or they're paid through. The individual homeowner has a light on their lot and they pay
Oh.
it through their power bill.
Okay.
There's a couple of weird circumstances out there. I'm not quite sure how they all ended up that way, but that's the way it works. So I believe the one there by Cold Creek Way is actually, I think it's Clearwater Cove is the name of that subdivision, and it is an HOA that pays those power bills, is my understanding. So,
We live in one, Tom, and it's the HOA pays it.
All part of the fee?
Yeah.
Now we know where you live. The only one up there on the east.
So I wanted to bring your attention to these. This is a list of all of the city-funded lighting installations that have occurred, and I know it's a big list. However, it does kind of show that the items in that left column are the lights that were complete, the projects that were completed as part of the master plan. We had a 5-year master plan that we had put together. There was kind of a real deep dive into the first 3-4 years, and then the 5th year was kind of a catch-all for a lot of projects that that we would hope to get done. However, we haven't quite completed all of those, but of those completed lights, you can see there's 186 of those that were completed as part of the master plan. We have another 31 that are continuing in that center column that are currently under construction or to be installed. Hillfield Road, Church Street. There are 2 subdivisions, Golden Avenue and Cook subdivision, that we have not installed due to either right-of-way issues or, in the case of the Cook subdivision, they have individual yard lights in their front yards, and they have their power meters to their homes actually connected to those, so it's not quite the same as going and installing our lights and removing the ones that are in there. So we've kind of put that one off, and we felt like where there's existing lights in that neighborhood that maybe it's being adequately served. So and then in that center section there, the lights that are not on the master plan that we've done, you can see there's 264 of those, and of those 264, you can see where the arrow points, there's 126 residential installations that were not identified in the original master plan. Those projects were requested to go into existing subdivisions where there was either no lighting or inadequate lighting that weren't originally identified, and then kind of what we call plug the holes, where there were, lights around the area but not in those subdivisions. So of those 126 lights, those were not new developments; those were existing developments there. But then you can also see there were quite a few projects that we took advantage of the roads being torn up for whatever reason. So Fort Lane, that was an important area around the high school that we wanted to make sure we adequately lit. Gentile as well, from Fort Lane to I-15, we added a few lights there. Antelope Drive, Robbins Drive. Some of those projects are in addition to the UDOT projects that have come in. Midtown Crossing is one that we installed 30 lights on. Hillfield Interchange, things like that. They're all kind of, we've tried to take advantage of existing construction and take care of it when it was cheaper and easier to get to. As you see, those costs for the installation are pretty substantial, and if we can do anything we can to save those costs, we want to do that. So with that, I wanted to just kind of go over the residential master plan lights. So we had the list we had in year 1, 2, and 3. These are the only listed residential streetlight projects on our list. And of those, only 9 have not been installed. Golden Avenue was not installed because we have some right-of-way issues where we don't have property, and we just haven't pushed that issue yet to try and purchase that right-of-way. And then again, the Cook subdivision is the one with kind of the different circumstances there. So we felt like we've done a pretty good job installing the lights on the master plan in the residential neighborhood, and then also we added 126 other lights that were needed throughout that area. So I do have a
Didn't you say those 126 were not installed?
No, they were installed, but they were not on the original master plan.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood it.
Yeah, so they were specifically put in as a project as residential install lights, so that we could get those into places where there were not lights or adequate lighting that was identified. So So I was going to show, I have a spreadsheet, and we've gone through the list of projects. There's quite a few projects. Sorry, I got to get used to standing at the mic here. There's quite a few projects that we've done and completed that are on the list. There's quite a few projects that were on the list, but they were for roads like Gordon Avenue, 3200 West, 2200 West, where the development has not occurred yet. The improvements on the road are not fully complete, and so for those reasons, we've held off on trying to install lights on those roads because, first of all, installing lights with an unimproved street doesn't make a lot of sense, but also there's a cost to doing this, and development is a part of that cost that needs to be, I believe, supporting of this network of lights, and so I have that list and I'll provide that to Kim for you guys to review if you want. But there's quite a few projects in there that are, partially completed or on their way to be completed. But there's also a lot that we're saying, hey, it's not the right time because of development. It's not occurred yet, and we're not ready to go and improve the roadway completely. So I think that's all I have for you on the street lighting program. Any questions that I can answer, or things I can try and clarify?
Can you go back a couple of slides?
Yeah.
I just have two questions. Let's see. This one, where it talks about that there were 42 placed along the US 89 frontage road. Are any of those in jeopardy with all the construction that's going on?
No, in regards to being taken out or
needing to be moved, or
there may be a couple that need to be removed at Antelope Drive because they're going to construct the interchange. However, those will be replaced with the project.
okay. And then the middle column at the bottom, you have the total, and then it says does not include development lights. Do you have any idea how many in the city the developers have installed?
I would say, I believe we're right around 1,200 lights total. So, I mean, they would be the balance of those, 700 or so, 800.
So I got a question, Steve. How you, just an information question for me probably is, and how do you plan like a street, let's say like a 2200 or something,
Okay.
where part of the, say one side of the street, do you go through and design that street how you want it lit in the end and then split it up between developers? Or let's say this guy on this side of the road wants to develop, do you go and have him put all the lights in now, or how does that work? Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me see if I can make this pull up on our screen here.
Because some of them, you have them like the Parkway there on both sides going down.
Yeah.
But not all residential roads are that way.
Yeah, so we do have kind of a pattern that we try and follow. We try to minimize the costs that we have, and so putting them staggered on each side of the road is more of an aesthetic treatment. And so we do have roads where we want that kind of look, and so that's why we programmed it that way. However, some roads have overhead power lines which complicate trying to get streetlights in, and so we're forced to be on one side or the other. But the goal is that development pays for their portion of the lighting system. And in the beginning, we were trying to just say, oh, hey, a new development came in and they need to put a light in. But now we've looked at the plans and we've said, hey, we need to master plan this road. Oh, excuse me. We need to master plan the road. And because of that, we've laid out this map and this program. So
you have kind of the streets all planned how they'll develop then.
Ed, how do I get this website to jump on the screen? Or can you see the map on the screen that's got the green dots? Okay. So I just like move it over here. Oh, hey.
Oh, there's one.
So this is actually our GIS map. It's not as pretty as the one that the PDF has, but all of those green dots with a red circle, or red dots with a green circle around them, those are all proposed street lights that we have. So Tom, for example, on 2200 West, you can see that we have a whole bunch of lights down there south of Gentile that need to be put in, and then also at 3200 on West Hillfield Road, Highway 89, there's a whole bunch along the frontage road. So our lighting engineer takes this map and he kind of builds out the master plan for these areas based on where we think those will be, and then when a development comes in for that section, they're required to pay for their portion of that section. So
does somebody who develops later still have a portion to pay of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they would pay based on basically the frontage that they have along that roadway. Is there any other questions I can answer for you?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. What about our LTAP? Under the mayor's report, I was going to have somebody kind of update these new
I got
folks
one last
on
question for
the
you, Steve.
local technical assistant
Yeah,
program
Mayor.
that Utah State has that.
Yeah, I'll address that one too.
Okay,
is
are you guys good
if
still?
we're-
Because I mean,
if
this
we're done
is
with the
very
street
interesting. I
lighting.
think you'll want to hear about this.
West Davis.
Yeah, is there going to be a lot of lights we have to put in, or is they all in?
There will not be a lot of lights on West Davis. There will be lights along Layton Parkway and 2700 West. However, with the West Davis corridor, UDOT has committed to certain lighting standards, and so there will be lights where necessary at the interchanges, but they will not be lighting up the whole frontage, the whole right of way for that project. So, okay, are you ready to go on to the LTAP project? Okay.
Oh, you're good, but next time speaking to the mic.
You'd already moved on.
It's okay. You still need to speak into it and not turn sideways.
Okay, so in 2018, Layton City partnered with the Utah LTAP organization. It's called the Local Technical Assistance Program, and what they are is they're a group that helps local agencies, UDOT, the Federal Highways Administration, through this list of items: technology transfer, technical assistance, training and workforce development, information services, and just basically any transportation needs that people have. And it's housed out of the Utah State University Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. And the program that we utilized in 2018 is called the Traffic Asset Management Software, or TAMS for short. So if I refer to TAMS, that's what that means, is it's just the program that they use for this. The pavement management system that they have is a GIS-based physical inventory of the roads and a condition survey of our streets. So as we looked at our roadways, we thought that it would be helpful to get a full pavement condition assessment done in order to determine how much deterioration, how much life we have in our roads, and then they help come up with a needs assessment process where they say this much of your system is deteriorating and it needs this type of treatment and other things that are important to pavement management. It really analyzes the root cause for pavement deterioration. And I believe the last time I gave this presentation, I really had to stress that this is not an aesthetic condition assessment. It has nothing to do with how the road looks, and it has really very little to do with how the road actually feels when you drive it or any of those things. A lot of people look at a roadway and they say, oh, that's ugly, and even if it's ugly, it still has a serviceable life. And so that's where this is based on absolute just structural integrity of the roads and the ways that you can preserve that structural integrity going forward. So they came up with, or they did an analysis of our roads, and then they came up with recommended maintenance and preservation treatments, and then those costs. They said if you do this type of treatment, this is where you would end up. And the mechanism that they use is what they call remaining service life. So a brand new road is considered to have 20 years of remaining service life. So the RSL of the street network is the acronym we use for the pavement age. So just a little bit of a FYI knowledge for the council mayor is that the functional classification of our roadways, or what we term our roads, we have about 20 3/4% arterial roads of our streets, 7% collectors, and then almost 73% of our roads are considered local roads. And that's important because the treatments that happen on our arterials and collectors are vastly different from our local roads. Local roads tend to be the roads that sit and bake in the sun, and they don't see a lot of truck traffic or heavy traffic. But our arterials and our collectors are the ones that are carrying a lot more volume and a lot of bigger vehicles and things like that. So they get a little bit more of a beating, I guess you would say. So as I mentioned, asphalt pavements have a 20-year service life if they're brand new. So when you pave a brand new road, that's the RSL would be 20. Okay, and then it goes down from there to 13 to 18 of RSL would be very good, and 10 to 12 would be considered good, fair, poor. You can see the list there. I don't think I need to read everything on these slides, but basically. Conventional practice was that you do a preventative maintenance treatment and rehabilitative treatment on the roads during its 20-year service life. So you say you have 20 years. If you did nothing to the road and just let it sit there, they would consider that you had 20 years of service life left. But if you do these preventative maintenance and rehabilitative treatments, you can extend that 20 years out into the future and save a substantial amount of cost, because the most expensive treatments that you have are the reconstructions of the roads and basically replacing the pavement structures. So a couple of pictures from the slides. They took these for us. You can see the pavement condition on that road is considered excellent. It's basically a brand new road that was just barely paved right before the assessment. This is actually West Gordon Avenue, and this would be considered very good, 14. You can see that there's been some crack seal and then a surface treatment over the top of that to help preserve this pavement. An RSL of 10 on Fort Lane there. You can see there's a little bit of cracking that's gone on, but there's been some crack seal and also some treatment on that. So that would be considered a good road still. This is considered fair. I know it doesn't look like it's fair, but it's structurally, you can see there's kind of that problem in the middle there, but the remaining pavement around it is not really deteriorating and failing at this point. So there's some treatments that you could do to fix that. Now, up there on Sunset Drive, this is considered a poor road. It has a remaining service life of 4. Mainly due to all of the cracking and the fact that it's not sealed. It has caused some of those cracks to propagate and be a problem. And then this would be considered a failed road section. You can see all of that. We call it alligator cracking, but that's a fatigue crack that's basically showing us that the road has lost its structural integrity with the base and the pavement. And so the other thing I need to point out is just because you get to 0 doesn't mean you can't drive on the road. It just means that for the purposes of our assessment, the road has met its usable service life, and the treatment at that point is a reconstruction and a brand new surface being placed on the roadway. So why do we do pavement preservation? As you can see, the blue line represents the performance curve of the asphalt. So at 20 years, you can see it's good, and then you kind of tick down. You get down there to about 11, 12 on the line, and then you do a preventative treatment. And the dashed line, blue line there, this blue line indicates what would happen if you just left the road to fail. But if you do a preventative treatment, you can push that RSL back up, and then you get a little bit more life out of that, and you kind of extend that curve. And then you get down here to a rehabilitation treatment, and you push it back up here, and so you're trying to do that to avoid those expensive reconstruction costs that need to occur at some time in the life of the pavement. So again, the RSL is not affected by the appearance. If it's black, it doesn't mean that it's beautiful or anything. It just means that we've had a treatment on it. But sometimes roads sit in the sun and they oxidize and they turn a little bit gray. But that doesn't mean that they're failed or that they don't have, the structural integrity in the road. It just means that sometimes people don't like the look of the road as it sits and oxidizes. But the responsible maintenance program builds around the fact that you're trying to improve that service life of your system overall and prevent getting to the point where you have to reconstruct roads because you've neglected them in an effort to beautify the pavement instead of using it for what it's for, and that's to transport vehicles and things. So there are three categories. There's a preventative maintenance, rehabilitation, treatments, and reconstruction. The most expensive are at the bottom of this list. The least expensive are at the top. So the preventative maintenance is our seals and other types of coatings that go on top of the pavement. They don't necessarily add any kind of structural capacity to a roadway, but they seal them up and they prevent either the sun from oxidizing and damaging the roads, or they prevent water from entering in and damaging the subsurface components. So, and you can see that last bullet in that section. They're about a fifth the cost of rehabilitation, and they're about a tenth the cost of reconstruction. So when we go out and do a lot of the slurry seals and crack sealings, they're significantly cheaper than having to put brand new pavement down. Rehabilitation treatments are a little bit more aggressive to try and solve the problems. They are used to add structural capacity to a roadway. So if the pavement is failing due to cracking or other things, a lot of times we will, do a 2-inch mill and overlay. That's considered a rehabilitative treatment. They do cost 2 or 3 times more or less than reconstruction, but they're substantially more than preventative maintenance. And then reconstruction is the least desirable. It sometimes is necessary, but basically you get a new pavement section. You usually have to replace all the base and additional subgrade in order to build the pavement structure back to what it is required to be in order to provide that 20 years of remaining service life, but it is the most expensive. So out of the LTAP survey or study, this chart is provided to us, and what it basically shows is across the top black bar, you've got your remaining service life of the road. So if you have a road that's in the 10 to 12 range, let's say, as you follow that chart down, the numbers in the chart indicate the remaining service life that you'll actually add to that road by putting that treatment on it. So if we use 10 to 12 as our example, and you wanted to put, let's say, a slurry seal down on that road, you would add 5 years to the life of that pavement. So you'd take it from a 10 to a 15. If you put a crack seal down on a 10 to 12 year or RSL road, you only basically gain a year. If you put it down at a 16 to 18 and seal those cracks up, you can actually push it back up into the 20 range there. And so basically we use this chart to determine and help us determine what type of problems there are in the roadway and what the most effective treatment is for the cost. So as you're looking at that list, it's a pretty substantial list. We don't use every one of these treatments because some of them just don't work well here in our area. Some of the climate issues we have don't allow for every one of these to be used. Plus, it's kind of hard to manage that many treatments when we have some specialized contractors that come in and provide pretty competitive pricing for us. So. But again, if you look down there at the bottom, if you do an overlay, you add 15 to 16 years to the life of the pavement by doing that. But you pay $24.75 instead of 90 cents up at the top. So just kind of to keep that in perspective. So hopefully I'm not boring you too much with the lists here, but the pavement distresses that they looked at, they actually go down that entire list there. There's fatigue cracking, longitudinal cracking, transverse cracking. Those are some of the big issues that you see out in the roadways. The fatigue cracking is actually because the subgrade has lost its support, and asphalt pavement is considered a flexible pavement. If it doesn't have the support from the subgrade, then it actually will crack in certain patterns and things. And you'll see a lot of that in the wheel paths where large trucks or vehicles consistently drive. Longitudinal cracking is either because of poor compaction or because you've got heavy loads on a roadway. And then transverse cracking is a lot of what you see in this subdivision roads where it's just from thermal expansion and contraction of the roadway. Block cracking is anywhere where the longitudinal and transverse cracking come together. Utility cuts are a huge problem. There's substantial evidence that indicates that utility cuts are a major contributor to pavement deterioration, and as such, the city has implemented a street cut moratorium on any new roadways that we have so that they cannot cut those for 3 years after the pavement has been put in place, and there's additional things that need to happen in order to make sure those pavements are sealed back up. Edge cracking is an issue in places that mostly don't have curb and gutter. The roadway doesn't have a support system on the edge, and so if the vehicles drive out there, they actually crack the edges. And then rutting is something that we saw a lot of on our heavy roadways like Hillfield Road and things. A lot of times that happens at street lights and things where the trucks are stopping and putting extra stress on the roadways. So,
Steve,
yeah, go ahead.
which one causes the potholes?
It depends, but it's usually the cracking ones. So the fatigue or the longitudinal cracks will get those water in them, and then as the pavement gets hit with the vehicle, that pressure from the water, the hydrostatic pressure, whatever you call it, would actually push that pothole and break that out, and then the subgrade and the support get wet, and then it continues to flex, and it adds a lot of those problems. So
I told you guys would get an education on this. This is good.
Are we gonna?
I'm just trying to keep you awake. Let me.
Can we get this copy sent to us?
Absolutely.
The presentation.
Yeah, I'll make sure Kim has this, and I'll provide you guys all a copy of it.
Okay.
So. I do have the full report. It's 205 pages. The first 40 is the report, and the rest is all of the. Yeah.
Hey, it's
So,
better than Congress.
I'll take page 1 and 7.
You want page 1 and 7? Perfect. So just to tell you how the pavement is assessed, this is the sheet that the college students use, and I'll be honest, as a college student, I don't know that this would be that exciting, but it's actually really informative, and it helps you really understand what happens to roadways and pavements as a civil engineering student. So as they have this chart, it's got all 6 of those different fatigue or excuse me, the different distress ratings on it, and then there's a chart there on each side, and I'll zoom in on this one, and I'm going to use fatigue cracking because it's the one that actually shows up in our city the most. But basically, the way you look at it is you look at the extent of the fatigue cracking, and you rate it either low, medium, or high, and then you go to the severity, which is low, medium, or high, and it's based on how often it occurs and the size of the cracks and those things. So that number on the chart on the right actually equates into an RSL. So if you picked 5, you say you had medium extent and medium severity, you'd have an RSL of 6. If you had low and low, you'd be at 10, and if you had none of this, then you'd be at 20. And each one of those different categories has a different RSL chart with it. So fatigue cracking is kind of an interesting one, because if you've got fatigue cracking at all, it drops your remaining service life in half, really, and it's because that's such an important structural component of the roadway. So so I'm not going to go through each one of those charts. Every one of those charts is the same, other than the way that the cracking or excuse me, the fatigue is, the distress is calculated, and then they use that chart to determine. And so if you have multiple distresses in a road, say you have longitudinal cracks, but you also have fatigue cracking, whichever distress is the worst or gives you the lowest RSL, that's the governing distress on the roadway. So they went through the whole city, and they said, this is what you have. And what we found is we have almost 42% or just over 42% of our roads have fatigue cracking in them. And what that means is that we need to get them sealed up and keep the water out of them so that they don't continue to deteriorate. The longitudinal is pretty high. The transverse is really high from the standpoint of the roadways that sit and just bake in the sun. The residential roads, the thermal expansion contraction, you'll see cracks every so often because of that transverse cracking. The good news is we have 11% of our city with absolutely zero distress in them. The block and the edge cracking didn't even show up either. And then the patching is, those are what would be considered the utility cuts or other patches that we've had to make in order to prevent the potholes from appearing, and then so 2% are pothole related. So what does that all mean for us? The average RSL is 11 years for our roadways in Layton. The average RSL for Utah City surveyed since 2002 is 10.89. So we're very average when it comes to our system. And then that chart down below shows where our roads fall. And so the good news is that about 80% of our roads are in the fair to excellent condition. About 65 of those are in the good to excellent condition. The challenge is that poor to failed condition. Those are the roads that are going to cost us a lot of money to fix in the future. The real silver lining is that we only have 0.32% in the failed condition. So that's actually very good for the assessment that we do. The average, or excuse me, the recommended condition is that, the recommended pavement preservation program is one in which the RSL will be 10 and less than 3% would be in that failed condition. So we do meet that criteria. So to break that out a little bit more, this is the same slide as before, except it shows that the average RSL on our arterials is 12, almost 13. Our average RSL on our roads in the local is 11, and then our collectors are slightly below 10. So we've tried to put a lot of money and effort into maintaining our arterials, as they are the main thoroughfares through the city, and they do see the highest volumes. And then we obviously have some work that we need to do on our collectors and as we go forward. So this slide just is showing, basically what are the treatments that you would do depending on the RSL. So what they did is every street in the city has an RSL assigned to it, and then they assigned a preventative treatment or a rehabilitative treatment or a reconstruct treatment to it, and then what the recommended treatment would be and the dates, or a timeline to do that. So you would see there's a 3-inch overlay, there's rotomill and thick overlays, there's slurry seals, there's thin slurry overlays, there's just all kinds of different treatments that we can do to try and preserve our roads. And the goal is to kind of push our roads from this fair to good category to keep them from dropping into that poor category by doing these preventative or rehabilitative treatments, so that we can add service life to the road without spending the money on the reconstructs where it costs us all that money. So it's to try and keep things moving to the right on this graph. So some of the challenges that we have and some of the things that they pointed out in the report are that the cost of these treatments has increased significantly over the last 10 years. The price of asphalt has gone up. Just the cost of everything in construction has gone up over the years. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of B and C gas tax funding increases over those 10 years either. So we're asked to preserve more roads with the same amount of money as we were receiving 10 years ago, and the cost of those treatments have all gone up. So it's putting us in a real tough position where we have to really maximize our money and be able to do the things it takes to keep those roads from entering that failure state, because we're spending a lot of money on a reconstruct when we could probably put a pavement preservation down and triple or quadruple the amount of roadway we can treat. So the option that LTAP provides is that you can either find other sources of funding, you can either just let some of those lower roads go down all the way to zero and then just fix them when they get there, or figure out a solution. And so that's what we've tried to do, is come up with a program that will keep our roads at the best RSL that we can keep them at reasonably without wasting money and spending it on the high cost reconstructions until they're absolutely necessary. So that's the chart that we have here for our road network. You can see 37% of our roads are in that 10 to 12 category. To keep the roads from an RSL of 10 or more, and 3% That's just another graph showing our distribution. So the estimated RSL of our roadway, if we continue to do the funding that we have right now, which at the time was $2.4 million, our RSL will drop from 11 down to about 9.19, and then we'll end up having our roads that are in that failed state go from 0.32 up to 2.68. So we're kind of treading water at this point if we continue the way we're going. And then this last slide, we did some analysis to figure out what would happen or what we could do in order to bring our roads up and keep them above that 10 mark. So if you look at the graph there, the yellow line at the top on the far right would be in year 5. That would be a $4.5 million budget a year. And if we did that, we could raise our RSL to slightly above 13. We looked at what would happen if we did a bond and fixed a whole bunch of roads all at once. And you get a really big jump in year 1, and then it kind of levels off, and you actually end up worse off than you were if you just spent $4.5 million a year because of the interest that you're paying on those loans and whatnot. We looked at $4 million a year and where that would put us. That puts us at about 11.5. And then we looked at $3.5 million, and that puts us right there below 11. So it would keep us in the same place that we're at now. Again, LTAP recommends that you stay above 10 and that you have less than 3% in the failed category. With the current projections of our funding that we had at $2.4 million, that's based on the B&C road funding that we receive. We would drop below that 10%, and we'd be very close, 10 RSL, and we'd be very close to the 3% of failed roads. So anyway, that's all the slides I have. I've got all the data and everything you want behind it, but I'm not going to share it with you unless you ask. So
Thank you.
There are some maps we put together. I could show you kind of what we're doing with our GIS if you're interested, but I'm going to leave that up to you guys.
Just a question for education. The arterial roads, I'm imagining Antelope and
Antelope,
Gordon,
Hillfield Road, Gordon.
And then collectors are, so Fort Lane,
Fairfield. Fort Lane, Fairfield, those would be considered more of a collector. Maybe even, what road am I thinking of that I just drew a blank on? Some of the bigger roads that are not the full size of an arterial, but they're not local streets that you would see in a subdivision.
So in addition to all your other budget questions, I just thought I'd throw a little bit more fuel on the fire there so you kind of understand what all we've got to look at here. But, I really want to thank Steve and also, I guess, the students up at Utah State for conducting that survey, because, it's a good survey, and I knew you guys would, be able to glean a lot of information out of it.
Can I ask Steve a question?
Sure.
It's kind of budget related. So when a road gets to failure stage, do other utilities and stuff need to be looked at? I mean, you've got the road all torn up.
Yes.
Is that not the appropriate time to look at any other repairs or whatever that need to be done below?
Yeah, absolutely. Every time we actually look at our water and our sewer lines and things that we're repairing, we're actually trying to assess the pavement condition as well. If there's a road that reaches failure before those utilities are giving us a problem or something, we are evaluating those to make sure that if we're going to put brand new pavement down, we want to make sure that the utilities are going to last for that life. So that if, to your question about the sewer, if we had a sewer line that was giving us problems and it was 60 years old and we needed to put new pavement down, we would combine those two in a budget request to make sure that they were replaced at the same time.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's good.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I was just going to mention, in support of what Steve said, as a reminder back to when we had the all-day budget meeting, you'll recall we talked about, we didn't reference the details of LTAP, but referenced that study. And so in the current year budget that was put in place by the prior council, there was an additional roughly $740,000 that the staff recommended be moved or utilize some of that Prop 1 money that's eligible for this to address this very issue that Steve's talking about. And that money was focused on the seals, the crack seals, on that early preventative maintenance that keeps you from sliding down that RSL scale where you have to spend a lot of money. So crack seals, slurry seals, chip seals, those kinds of things. And then in this meeting we recently had, we recommended to you, just as a reminder, there's about another, this year, about 650 plus thousand that we're recommending additional be put into it for this very same purpose. So as you consider the budget questions and all of the concerns that you've talked about previously, I just wanted you to know that the part of what you addressed the other day or was presented to you is seeking to address this to keep that number in the range that Steve has suggested that is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just real quick, like under unfinished business, or excuse me, I can still title this Mayor's Report. I appreciate everyone tonight and for the help of the live streaming and that, but knowing the status of what the coronavirus should on its trajectory be by the time we meet at our next council meeting, I would say we better, pretty much plan on 100% being virtual on that one. Certainly we can address it as we get closer, but I want all of you to be aware of that. And in fact, for Ed's purpose, let's go ahead and plan on our planning commission to be 100% on this next one. I think we're pretty much there. And if you could go ahead and contact the planning commission and let them know that I think we should go virtual all the way on their meeting, just so that we've got everybody's safety in mind. So with that, I'm ready for an adjournment. I don't know if you guys are, but with that, I want to say stay safe and let's go home. You guys in agreement? Okay.
I make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Thank you very much.